Alright guys, today we're replacing an alternator on my 04 CL600, and we're replacing that expensive part because of that problem. And I will walk you through it and show you what exactly happened. Alright, so this car has been down for about a month and a half so far. I only drove it when I first bought it. The reason to that is that the garage was flooded with water, but now it's all fixed up. Let's go ahead and start. Car is dead. That's not my issue right now. Go ahead and put the hood in service mode. Here we go. Let me walk you through what happened here. I'm having to replace the alternator because when I drove the car it was sometimes overcharging and sometimes undercharging, and of course it was throwing a check engine light. The reason to that is whoever owned the car before me took it to a shop to get it repaired, and they replaced his radiator, which looks fairly brand new. Now that shop that did that work skimped on replacing that piece, which as you can see is poked, and that piece goes exactly right here where I put a new one and I put a clamp on it. That piece right there, and it's just basically a block off rubber piece that blocks the coolant. It could have been used on a different model with different stuff coming out of the radiator, maybe a cooler of some sort, or maybe a water cooled alternator. Now when that piece was leaking, it was leaking almost right above the alternator, and it took out the alternator. To that reason, I'm having to replace it. I couldn't find a decent used one that people are willing to ship, and I couldn't find a shop that is willing to replace a voltage regulator for me. So I ended up coughing $600 plus on a brand new alternator, and we are going to replace it today. I also found a couple of other leaks when I pressure tested the car, and I went ahead and took care of them. It was an O-ring right here above the thermostat housing, and I had to replace that sensor because the O-ring of it was completely gone, and I had to buy a sensor that comes with a new O-ring. After all that is done, I'm gonna pressure test the vehicle again and make sure all is good and fire it up. Don't want to put more scratches than it already has, so I'm gonna put that on a fender. Alright guys, first thing first, I'm not gonna disconnect the battery because the car is beyond dead. It's been parked for about a month and a half or two since I bought it. I'm gonna go ahead and start with the belt, take the belt completely off. I think the alternator slides into a big bracket, and that bracket has, I think, a coolant hose going to it, and I think this is how this alternator gets cooled. It's an interesting design, but it is what it is. So belt off, and we'll go ahead and just take the belt off and disconnect the connection on the alternator, and hopefully slide the alternator outside of its bracket without needing to take that whole bracket out of the block, or because it gets attached to the block. Pry tool, not needed actually. I'm gonna go ahead and get a Torx. I believe it's a T30, a little bit bigger than a T30. T40. Yep, T40. It's very important when you put that T40 in to make sure it's all the way in, otherwise you will strip your bolt and it's not gonna be fun. So make sure it's in, and then put it on your ratchet. Belt off. It's been on there, hasn't moved. Kind of crusty. I might be replacing that. It's a good idea if you don't have some sort of a program like Mitchell or Old Data or whatever manuals you use to draw a schematic of the belt, how it's routed, and go from there. Next is the connection that is bolted to the alternator. I'm gonna go ahead and take this off. Yep, it's a 16. Alright, so next is the connection on the alternator. There's some sort of a grommet on that nut holding the power line to the alternator, and I have to kind of pry this one off. There we go. It's on the floor. I'll get it later. Let's see what size that is. I can tell you it's not 16. Seems like a 13. On the ratchet. Crack it loose. Ratchet sits here. Nut loosening. Grab it by hand. There we go. Secure it on the side. And this is off. It does have some power to it, but nothing major. Alright, let's see if we can slide the alternator outside of its bracket without taking the whole bracket off. Alright, I got E-Torx holding the alternator to the bracket. I'm gonna go ahead and maybe use some wobbly extensions, reversals. First I'm gonna crack them loose. Good thing about those extensions is they lock and they wobble depending on what you want to use. Here's one, here's two, here's three. The other two are really hidden, so we're gonna have to play around with that. We're gonna have to really use our fingers to see where they're at. Can't see anything, so I think here's one. Wobbly side on. You know, I think I have a cooler line in the way. I'm gonna just take the nut off of it. Hoping it will give me some slack. There we go. Right here. Not a lot of slack, but somewhat enough to work with, I guess. And there we go. I'm gonna go ahead and take that bolt out. Since it's hidden, I can't see it. Might as well get it out of the way. There we go. Now I want to work on the one that I cannot see at all, and it's very hidden. And once this is out, I can bring my power tool and take the rest of them out. Not as horrible as I thought. I was able to press down on the rubber hose a little bit, squeeze in my extension, and it's coming out right now. Alright, it's out. Just gotta pull it. Come on. The rest I already cracked loose. All I gotta do is get the power tool and get them out. Getting the alternator out of the engine bay is going to be a different story, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Alright, now let's see. Okay, I see a place to pry it a little bit. We're gonna try that and go from there. Alright guys, as you can see, I pried it a little bit, not too much, just minimal effort, and it came out a little bit. It leaked a little bit on the floor. Nothing much because I already drained the coolant, and matter of fact, I might also try to flush and run some air through the heater core, just because it's safer. That's how I usually do it. So right now we're gonna pull it out and see if we can get it out of that space. Okay, to make things easier, I'm gonna take off the secondary injection pump bracket. I don't want to take the alternator actual cooling bracket off because there is a gasket between it and the block. I don't have that gasket and I'm not gonna reuse it, so worst case scenario I will end up buying one, but if I don't need to, I won't. So it off. We have the bolt. Okay, let's see if we made enough room to squeeze out the alternator. Hopefully that is enough. And alternator is out through where the secondary air injection pump sits, and as you can see, there is a seal around it where it seals to the actual bracket. We didn't need to take the bracket off, thank God, because I do not want to replace the gasket that sits between the actual bracket and the block. And I'll squeeze in there and show you what the bracket looks like. Alright, so this is where the alternator sits. It goes into that hole. I was able to take the bracket for the secondary pump that sits here and kind of slide it out from here. Now, repair links or manuals or all data, whatever you use, wants you to take the whole bracket off. I don't want to, I don't need to, so I'm not gonna do it. And there's a gasket, like I said, between it and the block. I don't want to deal with it. I don't have access to parts right now, right this second. All right, before we put the new alternator in, as we said, there's a new seal over here. So it's brand new and it's still thick, I can feel it. Before you seat that new seal, you need to make sure the surface that it's meeting is very clean. So we're gonna go ahead and clean around the bracket of the alternator. This is where water is actually trapped to cool it down, which is coolant. And then we're gonna clean it with brake clean, make sure it's all clean, and then we're gonna slide back in the alternator and start assembling. After cleaning the surface, I have the habit of lubricating a little bit the new seal, because you don't want to tie it down and then it gets cut or it gets warped. So I'm going to take coolant. This is what actually is in there. I'm going to just run it a little bit around the seam, nothing excessive, and then make sure it's all spread out and then bolt it back down. Okay, alternator to alternator bracket bolts, I can see that they have some Loctite on them. I don't know if you can see that right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and run them on the wire wheel, clean them all off, make sure they're clean of debris, and then put a little bit of blue Loctite, and then thread them on evenly, and then torque them down to the right torque spec. Alright, cleaning time. Make sure they're clean. Make sure they're dry. Give it a minute in air. Put them here. Flip this around. And my alternator is lined up with the bracket. Take this off. And I'm just gonna run a little bit of, oops, that's a lot. Like that. Just a tiny bit. And then I'll put it on. Alright, alternator is in place. Bolts are hand tight almost. I'm gonna torque them down to 8 Newton meter. So we'll set it to 8 Newton meter unit, and then we go all the way up till it resets. Here we go. 8 Newton meter. We'll go ahead and torque them down. Here's one. I'm gonna go in a crisscross pattern. Is hidden, but we will find them. And the last one of them all is also hidden. Oops. All torqued down. Now we make sure they're all torqued down after everything is seated. Here's one. Here's 2, 3, 4, 5, and the last one. 6. That's it. Okay, putting the air pump bracket on. There's a ground on it that I'm going to go ahead and clean. Alright, air pump bracket is in, and air pump itself is in. We're going to torque the pump to the bracket. 8 Newton meter. That's what I'm doing at least. Belt back in, route it the way it's supposed to be. Had a lot of space in there. Next part is the fan shroud, which is not fun at all. Alright, it's about almost in. Clearance is not great. I'm trying to be very careful not to crack anything. It'll take some more finessing and then it's in. Okay, so alternator job is completely done. Right now I'm spending the time of fixing whatever everybody has done wrong in the past working on this car. Like I said, I've only owned it for a month and a half, and this is the first time I started digging deep into it. I noticed that the intercoolers are missing some bolts, so I made sure to put matching bolts all the way around. And I'm noticing that the clamps are facing the engine. I want to make it neat and make them face the rail, the actual chassis, and I want to center them, make sure everything is good. I noticed that the O2 sensor wire was stuck under the intercooler, preventing it from sitting on its own bracket. So I fixed that. I was able to take this off and fix that, and then I'll jump on the other side and see what's going on. And yeah, let's get to it. That's the O2 sensor over here. The bracket is here. All we're gonna do is maybe take it out again. do it right for the first time, but you know. So this one, let's take it off and then put it on the intercooler first, and then what I want to do is take the clamps off and basically route them where I can flip that whole thing if I wanted to, but the writings are going to be facing me and I like that. And my clamp is somewhere right here. See, now this is much nicer when both of your clamps are facing the same direction and away from the engine. And let's make sure to see what size socket is that, because I'm not going to be able to squeeze in a flathead screwdriver in there. I think it's 6 or 7. Here's a 7. 7 works just fine. Okay, so start by putting it on the intercooler side all the way up. Maybe rotate a little bit. I think this is actually perfect. Even the writings are facing the front of the engine, which is neat. Right now we tie the intercooler hose side. Make sure the clamp is straight. If it gives you a hard time, just loosen it up a little bit and then center it the way you want. Okay. It usually leaves a mark on there, and I'm basically following the mark and also making sure it's straight front and back. And I'm gonna make it also stay where the chassis is instead of the engine. So make sure that nose all the way up. Look at that. This is done. Now you can install the bottom side. Just needs a little bit of work. Done. I'm noticing that this is loose. I wonder what they did. I'll make sure it's tight before I finish everything. There we go. Nice. Loosening the bottom clamp a little bit. Making it face the engine more, the front of the engine more. And I think I'm going to take some slack from the top of the hose, from the intercooler, and slide it down a little bit, just to kind of make it even. And we will need a pry tool, kind of work my way around that hose. Yep, see, here we go. I think this seems to be good in my opinion. Yeah, I'm a happy man like that. There we go. A little bit glove tab over here. Yep. Now we can tie it. Like I said, make sure your clamps are facing the way you want. Tight this clamp as well. I'm going to be careful not to push the socket hard onto the bolt, because then it will push your clamp in a direction that you don't want it to be pushed in. That's it. Wiggle test. Happy with it. Do it a little bit more. Quarter turn. That's it. Another wiggle test. I'm happy. Now I got 1, 2, 3 bolts. I'm going to make sure to center all of them before I tie them down completely. I chose to use the Torx over here. Again, it's missing bolts. I tried to match whatever I can match. I'm going to put a 10 over here. And a longer 10 in the back, and since it's hidden, I'm gonna choose my glove was already ripped, so what I'm gonna do is to make sure I have a magnetic socket, I just don't want to dig it out, and it's getting a little bit dark, so I just want to kind of finish. Getting hungry too, so did that where kind of the bolt sticks, just a quick old school way. Now we locate the hole, just make sure the O2 sensor is not stuck again where I don't want it to be stuck, which I think it is stuck right now, so it's easy to do that. You don't have to take the whole thing off. Kind of stuck. It's flying. I need to loosen one of the clamps. When I loosen the bottom one, it's just easier. Here we go. Sensor wire has been there for so long that it's already taken a shape to go around that bolt hole. That's why when I was taking it off and putting it back, it went back in there. I don't know why people work with that, but it is what it is. That's what you get for buying a used car, I guess. Fixing everybody's screw-ups. But without that, where's the fun, huh? Clamp in there. I like the orientation of it, so we're gonna tie it. Alright, that's it. Now we can do that thing again. The long 10 is in the back. Double fold the glove depending on the thickness. Make sure it's in a locking position. There we go. Leave that there. Crazy on this one because it doesn't have a lot of thread, and besides it's not like intercoolers are jumping out of cars nowadays. That's it. Properly bolting down the intercooler. Now let's route the O2 sensor in the back and then jump on the other side. Do pretty much the same thing, making sure everything is tight the way it's supposed to be and centered and held down by the proper amount of bolts. So the idea is to put this around the O2 sensor, and then the groove over here slides into another bracket behind the intercooler. That's what was not done before. First things first, bring me that O2 sensor closer to me, put the bracket on it. Bracket is on it, and I'm going to slide it back a little bit under the bracket on the higher side, and look at that. Just something about that noise when it clicks in the right way tells you everything. I am a happy man with this side. I like that these clamps are this way. We're just going to tie this one down after we make sure that it's all the way in. I like the clamps to kind of always be hidden away to make it, give it a cleaner look. Not the best job done over here because of fitment issues and whatnot, and not a lot of clearance, but that will do the job. So reviewing what we've done, O2 sensor routed correctly, 3 bolts holding the intercooler done, clamp is tight, clamp is tight, clamp is tight. I'm gonna make sure the pipe coming from the engine all the way to the intercooler is actually tight, and then send it. Yep, that's pretty much good. Alright, I'm gonna do the other side and I'll see you soon. Alright, air box is back in. Everything is bolted down, everything is double checked. Only thing left is for me to put some blue coolant in it. And I need to maybe get a map sensor because this one here broke. Everything's brittle. Car is 20 years old, so you know, hot and cold, everything gets really cracky. So we'll get that sorted out. Maybe I'll put coolant in it tonight. That way it bleeds on its own for a little bit, and then I'll have to deal with bleeding on my own later. But as far as I'm concerned, this vehicle is done. Alternator wise, we still have a lot more work to do on this car, so stay tuned. Well, once everything is done, you can never be too sure, so I always pressure test the car anytime I'm doing anything with the cooling system. So right now I left it at 10 psi. I usually try to go 5 at a time. I let it sit for about 10-15 seconds. I'll peek under the car just to make sure I don't have any leaks. So far so dry. It would be nice to have a lift. Let me grab my flashlight. So far so good. And let's go up to 15. On most cars, I usually don't go more than 20 psi, or sometimes I go as needed. But I mean, at 15 psi, before at 5 and 10, I was having problems with the thermostat housing and the temperature sensor. Now all that is sorted out. Let's take a look under the car. I don't see anything leaking. Yep. I already put some coolant in it. I still have to put more. I'm a happy man as far as it goes today. All right, that's it. Tonight I'll source out that map sensor. Tomorrow I'll add more coolant. Maybe I'll lift it up, I'll run it, clear the adaptations. I should put the battery on the charger tonight, and we should run it for a little bit, let it warm up, and then I have an oil change for it scheduled, both filters, the cabin filter and wipers, and then we'll drive it. Stick around for part 2 when I assemble it, scan the car, clear adaptations, and take it for a spin.